good regression testing is like teenage sex. Everyone talks about it, but no one has it. Almost no one, because modern times. Maybe this is outdated, but it's very, how to say, it's very normal for the regression testing. Why I decided to talk about regression testing? Because I think that we are doing something not maybe wrong, but less useful in the regression testing. I don't believe in right, in the correct and in incorrect things about testing. I believe in useful and useless things. That is my idea, but for the testing. So, just 1 second. Okay, who am I? I'm Gjore Zaharchev, Quality Assurance Coordinator in Sivas. It's international company. We have offices all around. I'm originally from Macedonia, and I live in Macedonia. But I'm working with the software testing teams and clients from all around the globe. I'm also software testing consultant, as I told you. I'm working on commercial project like everyone else in the company, but beside that, the day has 24 hours, so in this 24 hours, you're working 8 hours for the client, 16 hours, you can use them for something else. I have more than 12 years of practical experience in software testing. I started 2006. I was very young, after high school. So when I started college, I started doing this job. I'm teaching software testing. I have a software testing academy in Macedonia. I also teach on the university in Niš, practical work on the master studies on the university in Niš in Serbia. So in different countries, not only in Macedonia. I'm also regularly speaking on conferences and testing meetups in Macedonia, Serbia, and Bulgaria. More in Serbia and Bulgaria, because Macedonia, we don't have such a big community, so we have one event in 2 years, which is not a lot. And I test automation and agile testing evangelist. I love the exploratory testing. I love the proper way of doing, the more useful way of doing automation, not the silly way of doing automation. So I talk a lot about that. Usually I'm speaking very fast. Today I was asked to speak a little bit slower so they can translate. It's very interesting because I speak variety of a dialect in Macedonia, and that dialect is pretty fast. Even people in Macedonia don't understand what I'm talking. So my town is very specific, so that's why I'll try to speak very slowly. That is not usual for me, but I'll try to accommodate to that. So what is the agenda? We first need to define the ways. In order to find the solution, you need to define the way that you're doing something. If you don't define the way how you're doing something, you don't know what to fix. If you don't get a feedback for something that is bad, you don't know how to fix it because you think that you're doing the proper way. Then we need to define what actually is the regression testing. What's the purpose of it in order to find out how to improve it. Then some ways how to reinvent the regression testing. And the last one is the recommendation, what we need to do next and how we need to continue. So let's start from the beginning. How we do a regression testing. We do a regression testing on so many ways. I have that opportunity to interview the people in Sivas and to find out how they are doing the regression testing. And I have a case that I'm always talking about for a girl. Actually, she is 30 plus, maybe almost 40 years old, and she's more than 15 years in software testing. And that case is pretty interesting to me because according to her, good regression testing can be achieved only by increasing the team, because we need to do the entire testing. For example, if we have 10 sprints, in sprint 10 we need to test everything starting from sprint 0, sprint 1, sprint, depends how we have started. So according to her, we can achieve that only if we increase the team after several sprints, because after that you cannot, if you have 2 team members, for example, you cannot achieve the testing. So this was one of the triggers that made me to make this presentation, and and talk about the regression testing. Let's see the other ways. So, traditional environment, you know, maybe some of you still working waterfall, and we have some period in the year, through the year, that we are doing the regression testing, then we are doing again regression testing. Even we are saying that we are agile, we have, trust me, believe me, we have one project in Sivas that is waterfall. So, doesn't mean that waterfall died, because the client liked like that. So, we have this approach, we are doing regression testing, and regression testing is almost a month of sleepless month. No one is sleeping for that month because people are staying overtime, people are doing too much work, bugs cannot be fixed, and stuff like that. Then we have the agile environment. We are doing regression testing 4 days before the sprint. For example, if you have 2 weeks, we have 4 days sprint. But usually developers are providing the first testing code at this point. So we have only 1 day to do the entire testing, and then to do the regression testing 4 days, which sometimes is not a pretty good idea. This is the most common way that things are done. And actually there is a rare case, not rare, maybe for some of you is normal, when we have something that they are calling it 2+1. So 2+1 means 2 weeks of testing, 1 week of regression testing. And because developers knows that the latest they will provide the code, it will be better, they will safeguard themselves, and they are providing the code again. So we are not testing anything in the 2 weeks, we are doing some meetings, we are doing some planning, we are doing a lot of things, but the testing is done, the regression testing is done the last week. So you need to test everything. Is it actually a regression testing or normal testing? What are the cases, how the people are doing? So we have code freezes. Yeah, trust me, we still have code freezes. No one touches the code the last week. How you can forbid someone in the Agile environment not to touch the code 5 days before the delivery? Because Agile says we are making changes during the last day, which is something that is expected, which is something that is normal. It's pretty long execution period. So the period of a week in a 2-week sprint is too much. Then we are functioning on non-functional goals because we didn't do the testing. We need to test all the boundaries, we need to test all the UI, we need to test filters, sorts, I don't know, everything on that page that was not covered by testing because it's too late. And then test suite increased and are never revised. This is the case that I was talking at the beginning for that girl. The test suits are increasing, but they're never revised. If they don't find any defects, if they are unimportant, they are just increasing and increasing. We cannot hire 100 people after 1 year. It's not good to have 100 people in the team when team started with 1 tester. So it's nonsense, because we know in Scrum you cannot have more than 9 people in the team, including developers, tester, business analysts. So in order to come up with the solution, in order to fix this problem, we need to define what actually is regression testing. We know the problem now, we know what we need to fix, we need to find a way now, we need to see different options. So yeah, regression testing, if you ask the developers, writing bugs actually. The regression testing is writing defects for them. Not writing code, writing defects. We're joking. Maybe you're good at programming, but you're not good in doing software, but actually in writing defects. So regression testing is when you fix 1 bug, but you introduce several other bugs. That is regression testing according to the definition of developers, not according to the definition of testers. So let's see the real definition. If you look for it on Wikipedia or ISTQB, we will see a definition. Regression testing is a type of software testing that ensures that previously developed and tested softwares still performs the same way after it is changed or interfaced with other software. Changes may include software enhancements, patches, configuration changes, etc. During regression testing, new software bugs or regression may be uncovered. Sometimes a software change impact analysis is performed to determine which areas could be affected by the proposed changes. So either also the problem and the solution are included in this definition. Both of them are included because we don't need to do only regression testing on the entire product, but sometimes we need to do a regression testing on patches, configuration changes, and so on. So we don't need to do the entire regression testing. Then the solution. Sometimes a software change impact analysis is performed to determine which areas could be affected by the proposed changes. So we exactly know where we are going to touch the software and what will be the impact. Now the system is not something not familiar to us. The system, we know what will be changed. There are several different techniques for doing software testing, and this is the most useless one, retest all. Someone will say, yeah, but we need to do retest all, but need to ensure. But there are so many questions. Do we have a need to do that? What is the actual explanation behind that? Do we have a time to do that? Then we have the regression action. We're selecting what to do based on some criteria. Then prioritizing the test case in several groups, high, medium, low. So based on that, we will make a decision what we will cover first, and then if we have time, what we will cover next. And the last and maybe the most useful way is the hybrid way. So sometimes, not sometimes, but in practice, we have proven that the hybrid ways of doing something are one of the best ways. So maybe the most appropriate solution is hybrid solution. Then here is the Pesticide Paradox by Boris Bazer. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. And he's saying, if the same tests are repeated over and over again, eventually, the same set of test cases will no longer find any new defects, which is true. If we are going every day, not every day, every sprint, the same tests over and over again, our tests will become, actually our defects will become immune to our tests. Same like in the agriculture, if you're going to the same pesticide over and over again, diseases will be they will respond to these pesticides, and they don't care if they are pesticides. Same like taking pills. If you're doing the same thing for 20 years, there is no need for that. Let's see some facts about the regression testing. Regression testing is performed when changes are made in the existing functionality of the software, or there is a bug fix in the software. Regression testing can be achieved through multiple approaches. If a testable approach is followed, it provides certainty that the changes made in the software have not affected the existing functionalities, which are unaltered. In an Agile project management process where the software development life cycles are very short, resources are scarce, and changes to the software are very frequent, regression testing might introduce a lot of unnecessary overhead. This is one of the problems that we are talking. Unnecessary overhead. If we are spending too much time when we are going to do the testing, what we will do with the late change requests, how we are going to handle the changes on the last day of the sprint. Performing regression testing on a third-party component is difficult because it's an unknown entity. Sometimes we have vendor softwares, and we are performing regression tests for them. Is there a need to do a regression testing for these vendor softwares? If they're bad, they're bad. We shouldn't use them at all, or we should ask with them to see what can be happen for them to do the testing. One of the things to go a step further is to reinvent the regression testing, is to bring fresh ideas, to bring fresh, not only ideas, but some things that will work. How to reinvent the testing? Reinventing the testing can be very simple by using some simple heuristics like one of the heuristics displayed here. Do you know what are heuristics? How many? Okay, so it's a very low amount. So heuristics are rule of a thumb. You know the rule of a thumb meaning? So they didn't measure by tape, they measured with the thumb in 17th century. So you have the thumb and you're measuring 1 inch, something like that. So it's more, this approach is more practical, proven in practice, and less theoretical. Actually, it's almost no theoretical approach. Because theory and practice, theoretically theory and practice are the same. Practically they are not. So that's why using this rule of a thumb can help us a lot. This heuristic, RCRCRC, stands for recent, core, risky. Actually, RCRCRC is a mnemonic, how to remember the name. And stands for recent, core, risky, configuration sensitive, repaired, and chronic. So each of these sections have their own meaning. Doesn't mean if we have in this order that we need to use everything from this. We need to define first of all the tests based on these groups. Once we define based on these groups, we need to see what are applicable in our software, which are not applicable. So to grade them on some way, just to give them a weight. We have priority 1, priority 2, and so on. This was invented, actually firstly introduced, I don't know, is it invented or just introduced 2012 on a conference in Miami by Karen Johnson. Karen Johnson was the inventor or introducer of this heuristic. Let's start from how to define the groups, how to come with the grouping. So first, if we start with the recent, we need to ask us several questions. What new functional features or new areas of the code has been added? What was changed recently? And what testing around these changes should I think about? So first of all, we need to start what is new in the system. Not what was new 5 sprints ago, but what is at this sprint. What we have currently. What is the latest changes or what is the latest impact that we will have now. Not only what was recently introduced, but what will affect that recently introduced. So if affects something that is in some other component, we should think about that. So beside the question, what is new, what is also affected by this new functionality? So we have the first set of tests, which is pretty reasonable amount of tests, which is something that is normal to be executed. Then the core stuff. In the core stuff, actually, if we look, the recent stuff is very similar to the definition of sanity testing. We are doing sanity after every build, what are the new stuffs, what are the new fixes, and so on. So it's basically based on that logic. The core stuff is what is essential or critical, the questions about here, are what essential or critical functions or features must continue to work. What does this application primarily do? So if we have application of 10 pages, I don't know, maybe 20 functionalities, they're not all core functionalities. So let's say, what are the core functionalities of the system? Registration, login functionality, which we are testing normally millions of times because we need to log in with different accounts. But what if we have different levels? We don't think on the levels because, yeah, user is working, all other levels are working. Yeah, because developers did some crap in their code and they commented the part where we are doing the invalid login. I don't need to do the invalid login, and trust me, I have seen applications when I have logged in production with invalid password. Because no one is thinking about the core functionality that you should not be allowed to enter with invalid password. We should not think about edge cases in this case. We should not think out of the box maybe. We should more think in the box. Yeah, I know everyone is teaching you to think out of the box, but I'm teaching the people I'm teaching the people to think like there is no box. So right now we need to think inside the box. What's in the software? What's the purpose of that software? Then the third section is about risky. What features or areas of codes are inherently more risky, and what features of the application do I want to safeguard? Are all of our features, all of our functionalities of the system, are they all risky? Really risky? Actually, if you ask me, I will more focus on several things. One thing are the payments, because most of our tools, or our products actually, because we also have some products, are defined on that way for the clients to choose any payment vendor to integrate very easily. So the payment feature, testing on several different vendors, just in order to prove that we are compatible with them, with several, is a risky feature. Integrating with identity providers, because nowadays, actually a few years ago, 5-6 years ago, it was very interesting subject, SML, single sign-on. It was very interesting about the identity providers, different identity providers, and are we really able to support different types of these identity providers? Because I have worked for some identity provider, and they actually don't follow the patterns of SAML protocol. Sometimes they are required, but sometimes they're not following these rules. So you need to try at least a few of them, because they're trying to add some mark. Then configuration sensitive. Pretty few things. Configuration sensitive things, meaning what the code is dependent on environment settings, what testing do I want to play based on the environment, and this testing might include planning a subset of test production after go live. So this is what will happen if I have my code from environment that is lower development environment, let's say, if I put my code in testing environment, in staging environment, and then in production. What will happen with the changes like URLs for sending emails? Sometimes we are forgetting that we are using systems for sending bulk emails. We're using systems that are connecting to SMS vendors that are sending SMS from our system. So we need to see, are we using the testing environment, or we are using their production environment? So we need to be sure that we are using their production environment. We need to test in different environments, and we also need to check these things. This is stored in a text file that is normal to be stored, and that is expected to be stored in a text file. But usually when doing copy pasting, we are forgetting about some things because no one is looking at text file. Yeah, I made changes, I copy paste everything, but it's not that easy. So configuration sensitive stuffs are very few, sometimes none, sometimes zero. If you don't have such systems that we use, from some sandbox to some production environment, maybe if you use Salesforce integration with your code, but they are very important. And they need to be also subset of them to be tested in production, just to make sure that we are covering everything. The next thing is repaired. How many of us are doing the retesting of the defects when we have really retested? How many of us are taking all the critical and high priority defects into the regression testing? So we are almost not taking any defects in the regression testing, but we should start including them. We don't need to include the low defects. We should not include maybe some medium that are some cosmetic issues, and also some functionality, because sometimes maybe nowadays actually cosmetic issues are more important than the functionalities, because there are so many startups that are selling just the visual part to some clients. So how often should a defect be retested? That's the question. Should we retest only once and then forget about that? Or we should retest it once again before delivery? How many critical we will have? 10, 15 in 2 weeks? Less than 5. High, we will have 10 to 15. So if we have more than 5 critical, then we need to fire developers, get new developers. That is the solution. There is no other solution. what code has been changed to address defects and therefore may have created issues. So let's find out the other cases that are impacted, same like previous case with the newly introduced, but now not with the newly introduced code, now with the changed code. What was fixed and what is the impact on that? What testing do I want to do based on defects fixed? Do I need to do more testing? I don't need to do more testing, depends on the impact. And then we have the chronic part that is constantly broken. We have something that is constantly broken. We have at least one such defect or one part of the code that is constantly broken. If something is broken more than 2 sprints and we are fixing it every sprint, then it means need to be checked again. So the questions, actually, the conclusions are: meaning software code meaning some code may seem to be chronically breaking or having issues, and this letter remembers me to test features that seems to be breaking often. Sometimes there is some legacy code that is pretty buggy. Sometimes there is some code written by some developer that is not very experienced in writing such sort of code, so there are 2 possible solutions: either to fire that developer, or either to ask for additional code analysis and code reviews that will improve that part of the code. So these are 2 possible solutions. Don't just do the testing over and over again if it's chronic. Ask for 2 solutions. Fire the developers, which is impossible, we cannot find a new one. And the other thing is ask for additional analysis and code refactoring that will solve this problem. Think about data migrations. We are testing only, I will do a registration, I will do on this account. And usually when we are testing with banking software, we are forgetting that all of the accounts already exist in the system. Registration in the banks is almost 1 case per month maybe, because all of the people who owns accounts in the banks are already there. So don't test with new data. Test with the data that is already in the system. I've seen this case several times because I'm testing not only at work, I'm testing in my private life. And my bank several years ago introduced mobile application, mobile banking. And in the mobile application, because they were doing also at that time some migration of the system, they didn't migrate the data as they developed the mobile application. They developed the mobile application in one environment, which was the old environment, and do some changes in the tables in the new environment on the new server version, and I was unable to see my cards, my credits, and I was unable to see the entire history of payments that I had previously. So I asked myself, because I have credits, of course, and I asked myself, where is the data that I've paid for this? According to your logic, I'm owning this money again. So I already paid so many €1,000, now I need to pay them back. And I reported that issue immediately, reported that defect, and they fixed it in 2 days. They released a new version, and they were pretty satisfied and pretty thankful because they were able, no one identified that issue because no one has a tester mindset. People just using the application, I'll pay this bill, I'll do this. But what if I own this money again? So don't forget on data migrations, especially in the banking industry, is pretty important. People are forgetting on this, and I'm constantly fighting with the people that they are, look how I'm testing. I'm registering, I'm doing this, this, and this, and now the software works. No, the software is not working because we have thousands and thousands of records in the old database. Also infrastructure. It's changed from one version to another, from Azure to Amazon, from Amazon to Rackspace, or vice versa, or to Hive to something else. Don't forget that they have different versions of softwares there. Just identify what can go wrong. Sit to the developers, think about these ideas, exchange ideas, and come with a solution what can go wrong with the testing. Time. How frequent are our releases? How often we are getting late change requests? Are developers still delivering even on the last day? Are my testing colleagues available at the time dedicated for regression testing? Maybe someone is sick, maybe someone is on vacation. You don't have now 2 days for regression or 5 days. Now you have 15 days because Instead of 3 people, now you're only 1. One person can do the job of 5 people in 3 people in 15 days instead of 5. So think on this. That's why we need to be very careful with the time. And is my previous story testing quality enough? If your story testing is not quality enough, even if you have months and months of regression testing, there will be no benefit of it. So start first with testing your previous story testing, and then come up with the good regression testing. Documentation, how to document the things. Maintain simple checklists. Track results. If you don't track results, you won't have a benefit of it. Use mind maps. Mind maps, you know, they're a pretty powerful tool how to come to new ideas because you're visualizing everything. And we think more visualizing the things. Easy to use, easy to update. So if someone is working according to lean development, 3 rules and principles of waste that we can have. Actually, we should not have any waste according to lean. Reduce waste to 0. Avoid Excel, Word, or similar tools. Don't do Excel stuff. Yeah, I have Excel. If you're 2 people, how you're going to update that? You need to send that Excel. You don't have the version. Someone is looking in older version. Use some tool that is the purpose of that tool is to track results. Task management tools. Gjore is one of the tools that has also plugins and can be configured, and so on. Automate the things. Just because you're repeating some of the things, try to automate them. But not only the UI. Data creations that will help you to speed up the testing. Create data overnight, tomorrow start use that data. Automate web services, the thing that everyone is forgetting. Almost no one, when people are talking about automation, all think about web automation. I first starting from the web service automation. Then I'm thinking about the web automation. Automate the UI, but not in details. So as we said, the core functionalities. And also do some performance tests. Performance tests can be useful for the infrastructure test. When we are changing, we can easily run them for the infrastructure test. We can come with results. Okay, so summary and recommendation. Regression testing with current traditional approach is too long and very often useless. Regression testing should focus on testing change or impacted areas of the system. Having clear and reliable criteria for the regression testing can help you a lot deliver high quality product in faster time. So that is the paradox, how to come with a solution in faster time. Oops, sorry. Regression testing in Agile environment should be testing performed in reasonable time. What is reasonable? Less than a day, several hours in 2-week sprint is reasonable. Everything more than 4 hours or 8 hours is not reasonable time because someone will introduce a change at that day. Adapting some positive experience should be the step 1, but you need to adapt it according to your current needs in order to benefit. So, in order to benefit, you need to adapt it according to your project needs and according to your project organization. Don't blind fool yourself that something will help you because it was on the internet. Try it, see how you will adapt on internet, on your current project. And use heuristics such as RC will help you to accomplish faster regression testing and focus on the impacted areas. So that's all from my side. Now, any questions? We have also t-shirts for the questions. For the best question, actually. So try to ask the best question.
Hi. So what exactly was reinvented in here?
Actually, was reinvented the heuristic, how to prioritize, the way of prioritizing and coming up with test selection criteria. So this is one way to prioritize and come up with a better test selection criteria. Recent, core, risky, configuration, and chronic. Okay.
Hello? Is it possible to create any criteria for the selection?
Yep, this was one of the criteria, actually. Some groups of criteria. I came up with few more because RC was not enough for me. So I came up with few more like the infrastructure related criteria, criteria related with the migrated data, which is not part of that. So actually these are criteria. When we can separate everything in 6 to 10 groups, we shouldn't use all the 10 groups always maybe, but in some cases we'll use core functionalities, infrastructure functionalities, because there are no changes, there are no defect fixes. We only do infrastructure change in that sprint. So depends on what we are doing, that is the criteria. Depends of how we are doing. So we don't need to do the 10 things at once. We just need what we did and what we need to choose. If you don't change anything in the code, but only in the infrastructure, do I need to do the recent and repaired stuff? Because no one changed there. You get my point, or?
Is it difficult to manage this criteria?
No, it is not, because you have a simple checklist of, instead of 100 and hundreds of tests, you have a simple checklist that is 60 tests. So when you multiply the time of execution, you have something that is pretty manageable, and you can maintain that, and you can review on regular basis. You can review and revise that several times if needed.
Thank you.
Hi. Am I right that you are talking mostly about the manual testing?
Yes, because even if we do automation, we need to have a proper criteria what to automate.
So did you try to map all that heuristics to automation when automation coverage is close to 100%? Everything is automated, both services and UI. How is it working?
Yeah, maybe sometimes a client, I've never met that case when client has money to automate everything 100%.
Let's imagine that we have the money to automate everything, and we have separate team to automate. So is it working for that case?
Yeah, if you have something that is automated 100%, what is the time for execution? How much time you will need to execute that?
About one nightly run, for example.
One night, that is pretty small application. Then you don't need a solution to reinvent, to introduce heuristics.
We
just
have,
sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Go
So
on.
basically, combining the two things, if you have, 100% is impossible number to be honest, and it cannot happen. But if you have some reasonable amount of tests, again, you need to revise these tests just in order to see is this software immune to your tests. Automation tests, as we know, are not more tests, but they are more checking. They are not more testing, but checking. So something needs to be tested first in order to check it. So maybe the step one of going with further automation will be just checking what we need most at this sprint. Because, having a dedicated team to do the automation for the current sprint, 99% is not possible. Because clients, it's too expensive for them, so they are trying to save the money just to reduce the manual testing, not to increase something else. When you're doing something, if you're a startup and you're doing something because you have a budget of $20 million and you need to spend it, it's normal. So, but this should be the step one before proceeding with automation further.
Thank you.
Thanks. How is your name spelled correctly?
Gjore.
Gjore. Gjore, tell us please, can you speak more slowly? Because I expected you speak like Google Translator in second play.
I have never tried, so I don't think that I can talk. I need practice. I'll need a lot of practice to do that.
Because for me, it was in first stage slowly, but then you speed up.
Yeah, I cannot do slower than that, so sorry about that. I've never practiced slowly because they told me this morning to speak slowly, and it's very difficult to me, trust me. It's more difficult to me to speak than for you to understand. Yeah. Go ahead.
Hi, and thank you for the presentation. But I've got a feeling that your strategy is more suitable for testers who use at least glass box testing or white box testing. And in my team, the hardest part is define what part of a code was changed.
Actually,
we
yeah.
use black box testing.
Yeah, actually, it's not defined for white box testing. It's actually defined, let's forget about the box approach, it's defined for environment where we have communication with developers. If we have communication with developers, we can come up with the list. If we don't have communication, any box approach that you will have, it will be useless. So communication is the first point of this presentation.
Yeah, it's always a bottleneck, communication with
So
developers.
then you need to attend a presentation how to improve the communication with developers. That is a separate topic of this.
Gjore, have you ever used your approach in reality?
Yes. I'm using it every day.
Thank you.
There's so many questions. Maybe that.
He's my colleague from the same company and he's touching me. So you will see about that. Tomorrow you will get the yes.
You said that if you have too many critical defects, just fire developers.
No, I was kidding.
No, but yeah, do you agree that it's our fault because we are guilty to letting them to do a lot of critical defects?
It's fault for the testers or on
For
developers?
both, like that we are both guilty.
Actually, the entire team. There is no pointing a person that is guilty. The entire team is guilty because we are not learning anything during the retrospectives. What we have learned, if you are constantly mistaking in 6 sprints, is the problem to the one who is in the Scrum team, including the Scrum Master. Because no one asked the question, what should we do beyond that? How should we improve that?
Hello. Is that approach, the heuristic approach, applicable to big systems?
Yes.
In my case, we have 100 and 100 regression testing for one for SAP system. So is it applicable? How can we identify a specific configuration affecting a set of test suites?
Yes.
How can you industrialize it?
It's this approach in my practice is tried with large-scale Scrum team. When you have 5 teams with at least 1 to 2 testers in the team, and it was working like that. So everyone from his set of stories is defining what needs to be done. Again, it was Scrum project. It was not waterfall project. I haven't tried in waterfall, but I have heard on some conversations that it was tried on waterfall approach, and it is pretty useful. From my experience with this approach, it is pretty useful and it can be applied. Do you have more time or?
Maybe the last question. Who? Girls? I'm sorry.
Hello. Thank you for your presentation. You said that testing the parts of the application which do not belong to your company, which are made by other companies, can be tricky. So how would you suggest to fix this?
Yeah, we have such problems with these vendor tools, vendor softwares, especially these handling payment processors. These fintech companies have more options. And one of the things, it was communicated. We're thinking of revising the agreement with you and changing you. This was step 1 that was done. And they started to improve the testing. So believe me that this was we didn't even plan something. We just tell to them, we are starting to revise because you have so many defects, but it can be done on many ways. So first of thing is communication with these vendors. So if we start communicating more often, not just getting some software from that side, so communication is the key point of everything.
Yeah, sure, but why do you all in all need to test? As far as I hear, you suggest just changing the vendors.
That was just the conversation that we have. Yeah, we are thinking about the vendor, but you cannot change vendors because they're one of a kind sometimes. So this way, if they're one of a kind, if there are no more vendors, that are producing that code, just communicating to them, saying to them, you're causing issues. If you want, we will do the testing for you. We'll dedicate a person, but the price is not going to be that price, but now it's going to be a different price. There are so many solutions, but that need to go on higher level. we as testers sometimes cannot make this decision because someone on higher level, some senior management, is doing these decisions. Even what you will do, you will test, you will find millions of defects, and you will be happy. You spend your time for testing. You're not going to be happier.
Well, but you can test the integration on your side.
Integration,
and
definitely
maybe
you're
not-
testing, but sometimes people are doing testing, what I'm seeing regularly. People are doing, for example, because the integration is API or just some iframe, people are doing testing on their side. So we are not testing our APIs, how are integrated, but we are testing their APIs because their APIs are so bad. But you don't know what to test, what is expected, because do you have a documentation for their system? Do you know what is expected? What are the sizes? What are the values? What they have in the system? We don't have that information.
Well, you can just get smoke suits from the other side and check it yourself.
They are not providing. Yeah, it's communication is key point one, but sometimes communication is pretty difficult when you ask their testers. The manager from their side will say, yeah, this guy is a tester, go connect with him. But that guy, there is something called job security. And that guy is afraid that he'll be fired if he provides the info to you. The job security is the thing that is killing us. So that is, yes, so that is the problem. It's not the problem the management level, it's the problem the guy who is sitting on that side.
Okay, thank you. Got you.
The best question was?
What was, yeah, I forget all the people who were asking the questions.
Maybe they can stand
Yeah, can you stand?
up. All people who
You don't
ask
want
questions.
t-shirts? You don't want t-shirts? Who wants a t-shirt? Who want, let's vote. Who want, how to vote, how to do this? It's pretty difficult to me to make a decision. So, okay, the last question, because I mostly remember the last question will want a t-shirt.
For you?
Okay, thank you. Thank you.